We have with us Nathan Kline, Green Party candidate for Missouri Senate District 7. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you.
So let's start off by having you tell us what got you interested in politics and why did you decide to join the Green Party and run as a Green Party candidate?
Well, probably like most Americans, what piqued my interest in politics initially was probably the presidential races, the contests for president, as that's what gets the media coverage, that's what gets a lot of attention in our society, for better or worse. And I think that, the first election that, I need to say that, like most Americans, you probably just do what your family did in a lot of cases. Came from kind of a mostly Democratic Party family, and so I was just mostly kind of a Democratic Party voter, and I just kind of held my nose and voted for candidates that I didn't like, falling for the lesser of two evils argument. But the final straw that really put an end to that for me was the first Clinton administration. I really didn't like Clinton as a candidate and his positions, and I went on and voted for him anyway. And I was, and the first Clinton administration really, made me never again vote for what I didn't want, because the Clinton administration did everything, passed everything that the Bush administration was stopped from passing. The Democrats in Congress, put their, dug their heels in and stopped Bush from passing the whole raft of corporate, policies that Clinton passed. All the bad trade deals. You had NAFTA, you had GATT, most favored trade with China, which has been a disaster. The crime bill that made us the most locked up country in the world, and disproportionately, of course, affected people of color. You've got the Wall Street and telecommunications and other deregulatory moves in different industries that has led to repeated economic crisis and a massive income inequality in the country. And, they also gutted welfare, amounting to a permanent abandonment of a growing underclass in this country. This disabused me of the idea that voting for the lesser of two evils was a way towards moving towards anything I wanted in this country. So a turning point came in the next election, because I was like, I'm not going to do that again. And so I found this little Green Party that was drafting Ralph Nader, who, if you don't know Ralph Nader, I'm not going to go into it, but you should look him up. He's really one of the greatest Americans of the 20th century. And when Nader agreed to run, I worked for his campaign, and I worked for several of his campaigns. And what Nader taught me was that if you don't turn on to politics, politics will turn on to you. That politics is not a spectator sport. Politics is something that you've got to be involved in, and you've got to stay involved in. Democracy is not a spectator sport, and that I took to heart, and it stuck with me, and that's the heart of the Green Party. I think that Nader's arguments that voting for the lesser of two evils is the bad way to go was proven again by the Obama administration, who was supposed to be this candidate of hope, this candidate of change, whereas basically the Obama administration was a candidate of the status quo. Obama came into office after the corporate America had driven the world into a great recession. Basically, all Obama did was bail out all of the bad actors, and didn't charge any of them with any crimes, even though it was the biggest corporate criminal conspiracy in world history up to that point. We now have already beaten it, and basically, he expanded Bush's forever wars into more countries. He deposed the leader of Libya, turned it into a failed state. However bad it was before, it's a lot worse now, as there's open slave markets in the country. You've got, he had deported more individuals from this country than any other president in history. People knock Trump about it, but, this is just more of the same. And basically the only significant legislative accomplishment, if you can call it an accomplishment, was a libertarian health care plan now hung around his neck called Obamacare. Was Romney Care before that. Was actually written in the Koch brothers Heritage Foundation as a way to make sure that we never got universal health care, which is enjoyed by almost every other civilized country in the world. So, you know, it was certainly no advantage to vote for the lesser of two evils in that case either. Now, the Sanders campaign got me interested. I did in 2016. I said, well, I'm going to try, you know, maybe let's try this insider tack to try to you know, move one of these parties towards a people's movement, towards democracy. Well, you know, I learned a lot, and we all learned a lot then, as basically this was completely rigged. This whole election, of course, the parties are not mentioned in the Constitution whatsoever, and there's no rules whatsoever. And this was proven when the Sanders many campaign contributors sued in the Democratic National Committee in civil court and said, you defrauded me. I donated money to a candidate in what I thought was a free and fair election, a normal democratic process, and it wasn't. Well, the DNC defended it himself in court, not by saying, no, we offered a democratic process. They said, we are under no obligation to offer a democratic process. Indeed, we can go in the back of the room and pick whoever we want. And the judge says, you're absolutely correct. You do not. So we see that the two parties, or all parties, truly are anti-democratic mechanisms to thwart the will of the people before you ever get to a democratic ballot. So this, you know, this insider strategy of the Sanders campaign to take one of these parties back to the people was proven to be unworkable. So basically, the bosses have two bought and paid for parties. We must have one for ourselves. And the Green Party's been building that party and grows in strength all of the time. The Green Party, we take no campaign contributions, so we can't be bought out. We're a truly grassroots volunteer-based organization that is building from the ground up. We're focused on where real politics really happens, which is at local level, state level, and then, you know, we get to the national level. And that's how we've got to do it. And I encourage you to participate in that. As a matter of fact, you know, all over the world they're talking about a green wave. In many countries around the world, the Green Party is surging. Just last week, in French municipal elections, the Green Party won mayor seats in many of the largest cities in France. And this is happening in the United States too. People are surging to the Green Party because the Green Party represents real people and real democracy. So, you know, that's kind of how I got involved in politics and why I'm in politics, I guess.
Great, thank you. Our next question for you is, if you had to pick one subject that is the most important focus of your campaign, what is it? And why is it so important? And what is your approach to addressing it once in office?
That's a big question. That's a hard question. To narrow it down to one thing has to be money in politics, because whatever you care about, whatever you want to change in this country, there's one thing that's stopping it, and that is the veto power of the wealthy. We basically, you have to be honest with ourselves at this point. The Democrat and Republican parties represent their large corporate campaign donors. They don't represent communities, voters. Those are all secondary considerations to them. And you can see the results as corruption is now the norm. We think it's just normal for a corporation-rich individual to give hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, billions of dollars to a campaign, and that just freezes us out of the conversation. We're nothing but spectators, and we get to choose, you know, two completely bought and paid for choices. These parties, you know, also, make sure that the wealthy aren't paying their fair share of taxes. Just last year, Amazon not only paid no taxes, they had $129 million tax rebate. So not only have they taken over control of the decision making of our government, they don't even pay for the general welfare, for the roads, for the police, for the fire department. I mean, this is where we've gotten to at this point. So, basically the two parties as well collude to make sure that they draw district lines both at the national, state, even local level to make sure that they're overwhelmingly Democratic and overwhelmingly Republican districts. And then they don't run in each other's districts. If you've gone to vote in any recent election, you'll notice that in the general election, a lot of the time you have one individual on that ballot. I call that not democracy by definition. And we have to do something about that, obviously. And so I think these two parties have been eliminated as agents of change in our society. If you're happy about how our society is functioning right now, please do continue to vote for the two parties that got us here. Okay? But if you're not, there is an option, and that's the Green Party. And we're at a revolutionary historical moment at this point. The status quo will not hold, and we have to recognize that we're at a crossroads. Only the Green Party is the independent, is independent of the golden handcuffs that keep the two corporate parties from addressing the needs of the people in our communities. So, that's money in politics. That's got to be number one.
Great. Sounds great. So tell us, what kind of experiences in your life have best prepared you to succeed in office that you're running for?
Well, I think that, I'm a lifetime resident of Kansas City, of the district that I'm running for. I know my community. I am a member of my community. I am a longtime homeowner in my neighborhood right here. And, I am an activist in my neighborhood. I've been involved in making my neighborhood better for decades. And I'm a hard worker. I have a great work history of management, first in the private sector, in the hospitality industry, in restaurants, hotel management, catering, and I worked my way up. When I was 16 years old, I went walking door to door looking for a job. I got a job in a Mexican restaurant as a busboy, and I worked there for a couple of years, and I did everything in that restaurant, and I learned how to work hard, and I worked my way up into management, and a few years back in 2013, I took a big pay cut actually to move to the public sector because I wanted to do public service, and I went to work for the City Planning and Development Department of the City of Kansas City, Missouri, where I am dedicated to public service, and it is been really rewarding. I find that the people that work in the public sector are mostly dedicated people. There's not enough resources there to do what they're tasked to do, but they work hard and they're very serious about what they do. And I was pleasantly surprised, really. But I am an excellent manager and administrator of large organizations. That's what I do. And that's what I've been doing with the Green Party. I'm the outreach coordinator of the local chapter here, and we've been making great strides here. We've been, we're fielding a lot of candidates, and we're changing the conversation, and I think that's pretty cool. One thing that I bring, besides just being a hard worker, is I'm very focused on customer service, and I think that that's something that you don't hear a lot about from people running for office. Is that and that's what I've always done. That's what I do now, and that's what I'm going to do when elected. I'm going to serve the needs of the constituents in the community that's voting. I'm not going to serve the interests of big campaign contributors because I'm not going to have any. Okay, that's a big difference. Who my customers are, and I'm dedicated and I'm great at customer service, and I'm not for sale. that's I mean, that makes all the difference, and that's anytime you see Green Party on your ballot, that's what you get. Yep.
Great. Well, let's just kind of time travel into the future. Let's imagine you've been elected into office this November, and just imagine how do you imagine your role at first, surrounded by the hostile corporate party elected officials and operatives, kind of the status quo that you've been talking about. How do you imagine the role of the Green Party and yourself evolving as the party grows in its influence?
Well, the Green Party in the room is revolutionary changes to the room, okay? Because you suddenly have an honest broker in the room, all right? Um, you know, the Democrats and Republicans give you an idea that they are at each other's throats, that they hate each other, that they are completely different from each other. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. They both engage in the exact same corruption as normal every day. They spend most of their time calling for campaign contributions as opposed to doing the people's work. When they do meet people, they're meeting corporate lobbyists almost exclusively. And they are sitting there just taking in checks right and left and doing the bidding of the people that give them the checks. No one's there calling them out on it. It's such a normal. It's just all legal now. But it's not moral, okay? We need someone in the room that's pointing out the immorality of what's going on and not letting it drop and rallying people to that fact and constantly bringing up how we could be doing things differently, how we could be focused on meeting the people's needs as opposed to encouraging the rich's greed. This is a major change, and I think that you see that every place in the world where Greens have gained power. People like what they see. They like the changes. They like the honesty. They like the dedication to building a sustainable, peaceful community. I think that that is, a revolutionary change that is contagious, that people will be attracted to. You see it all over the world, and you're starting to see it here, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited to see it happen here as it needs to happen here, and I feel it will happen here. I'm optimistic, and I think that you look into it. I think you're going to see it as well.
Great. Well, I know you mentioned that money in politics is one of the primary focuses on your campaign as a big problem, we've got to face. I think there's another big problem that we're all facing and that I wanted to ask you about, and that is the global climate crisis. And can you tell us a little bit of, what is your analysis of the global climate crisis, and what do you see as the best way forward to addressing this crisis?
Well, this really is the most pressing issue. You got to say money in politics because we're not going to do anything about this issue or anything if we don't deal with money in politics. But if we don't deal with the global climate crisis that's bearing down on us, then nothing else matters, unfortunately. We've got thousands of PhDs in dozens of fields with unprecedented agreement that for several generations in a row now that say we have an existential threat caused by human-induced climate change, and we're getting to the 11th hour on this. We are completely running out of time. The argument amongst the climate scientists at this point is not whether or not, human-induced climate change is real or if it's going to be very impactful. The argument is whether or not it's too late to do anything about it, that humanity is lost, that almost all life on Earth is lost. You know, we have to act, and we have to act now, and we have to act, you know, profoundly. The UN has said that we have about 10 years to zero out fossil fuel emissions, and most climate scientists think that that's way too optimistic, but we still continue to expand our fossil fuel emissions, and this is incredibly distressing, and neither of the two parties is making, is doing what has to be done. Both of them have been in charge. Both of them have been in charge of all three branches of government in the time that we've known very distinctly this reality. And neither of them have done anything to slow, nonetheless reverse, this careening off the cliff to oblivion. Now, we have, luckily, a way to measure now what we need to do, because it seems very abstract. You know, we have this Paris Climate Accord that has very specific goals that all the countries of the world have stated that they will live up to on a year-to-year basis to lower their emissions so that we can save humanity. But it's all so abstract. But the COVID-19 economic emergency has given us some way to measure, you know, the scope and the scale of what we must do. Now, the COVID-19 emergency is, you know, economists are saying it's going to shrink the U.S. economy between 4 and 7% this year. Now, that's been a good thing for the environment, right? That's actually against our will slowed our emissions, right? But the Paris Climate Accord for this year says the United States has agreed to a 7.5% shrinkage in emissions. Now, and then we're committed to doing that again, that 7.5% every year this whole decade. So we have to shrink our economy voluntarily, probably twice as much as we've shrunk it involuntarily from the COVID crisis. Okay, that is very sobering, okay? Okay, so if that's true, and it almost certainly is, what are we going to do about it? We have a system called capitalism that organizes our economic and social life. Capitalism is short-term focused and growth dependent. Capitalism must grow to succeed. You see how it falls flat on its face in a shrinking economic situation like COVID. It just falls right on its face and just can't function. It's a completely dysfunctional basket case in such a scenario. So in a situation in which we need to shrink our economy twice as much as already shrunk for the next decade, we need a completely different type of economy. And only the Green Party is offering an economy that we can degrow our economy, slow it down, to focus on meeting people's basic needs and not facilitating corporate greed. The private sector is unable to stop itself. Capitalism cannot stop itself. It won't stop itself because it's only dedicated to one thing, and that's maximizing profit this quarter. It legally can't think of anything else. So we have to take the keys away from that driver of our economy that's driving us right off a cliff. And the public sector must step up. This is an unprecedented challenge, and it needs unprecedented leadership and unprecedented ideas. The Green Party is the trailblazer. The new Green Deal, the Green Deal, the Green New Deal, the Green Party came up with in 2005. That's how far ahead we are, and that's how far we still are ahead. So this is the party that's actually, number one, acknowledging where we're at. Number two, has been imagining how we're going to get out of this. And number 3 has the candidates for election this year that will focus on it.
Thank you for that analysis. We've got just a few more questions for you. Thank you for bearing with us. And bear with me while I get out this next question. It's a little long. But the current capitalist system that governs our lives has failed to make available to many individuals and communities sufficient access to resources such as, but not limited to, healthcare, education, and housing. Please give us your analysis of this economic system and how an eco-socialist Green Party alternative would function to address these and other shortcomings.
Well, this is related to how I kind of ended the last question, I suppose, but basically, government has been asleep at the wheel. Basically, we have said we have this laissez-faire, free market capitalist economy, and do whatever you want, do business, do whatever you like. If the market says that people get paid poverty wages, or they work gig jobs that pay less than poverty wages, then that's what the market said, and that's just how it's got to be, because the market is always right. That is, to my way of thinking, crazy, and leads to what the market, produces most, which is a lot of desperation. Basically, we have, a situation in which now the market has failed multiple times, right? We've had the market fail for the people. It's not providing for the people. People are losing their employment. Therefore, they lose their health care. They can't pay the rent. We have crises because capitalism is not prepared for a crisis. It doesn't prepare us to make it through the next crisis. And thus, we, the public, have to bail it out through all the bad choices that all the market actors have made to get us to this point. Again, the Democrats and Republicans line up to bail out the corporate actors, the bad actors, as the working class falls farther and farther behind and becomes more and more desperate. This is one of the main products of capitalism, is desperation. What's the alternative? The Green Party is going to run government in a way that it guarantees the necessities of life. This is cheaper and more effective. The example, and you can put this across all sectors, is how public health care works in this country versus other countries. We have a almost exclusively private healthcare delivery system here. And we spend twice as much money per person as any other country in the world on healthcare. Twice as much money per person. And yet we have tens of millions of people that have no healthcare insurance at all. And even when we do have healthcare insurance, that is not the same as having healthcare coverage, because your healthcare insurer is your healthcare denier. And we all know that. Why we put up with this, I have no idea. Other countries spend half as much money and beat us on every healthcare deliverable imaginable. Life expectancy, infant mortality, infectious disease rates. You see how this works in the middle of a COVID crisis, right? And other countries that have a good public healthcare system are getting out of it and don't have as many percentage of infections. So you can move this across every economic sphere in the country, and you see how the market doesn't deliver. We basically are buying Cadillac prices, but we're getting like a used Yugo, and it ain't going to get us there. It breaks down on the way. We need, if we're paying Cadillac prices, we need a Cadillac, but we don't even have to pay Cadillac prices to get where we need to go. And only the public sector can do this, and only the Green Party is offering this across the board. So this is very important. We have to understand that poverty is a choice that we make. Letting there be poor and desperate people in our society is a choice. You go to Sweden, you go to Denmark, these are places that have a lot less money per person to spend and have almost no poverty and almost no desperation like we see here. It's not that Americans are stupid. American government is asleep at the wheel and has been hijacked. It's time for the American people to take back our government to work for us. That's, and I think that now's the time. How much desperation do we have to go through before we change? Stop doing what you've done before. Try something new. This is the new. This is the answers to our problems.
Kind of reminds me of what they say about the definition of insanity, right?
Yeah.
Well, just a couple more questions so we can wrap up here with you, Nathan, and let you get on with your evening. So in our current political environment, the majority of eligible voters are disengaged and no longer believe that electoral politics offers solutions to the challenges we face. How does your campaign and the Green Party in general overcome this cynicism and pessimism to build the movement?
Well, I say the voters are right. Most voters, eligible voters, don't vote. Overwhelmingly, do they not vote? Even in presidential elections, a majority don't vote. If you go down to local elections, some local elections you're lucky to get 15% to bother even show up. Why is that? And I hear, the first thing you say, oh, Americans are stupid, and Americans are lazy, and Americans, deserve what they get. And I'm like, no, I don't think that. I think Americans are right. They understand. They look at the choice between twiddly-dee and twiddly-dum, and in a lot of cases, only twiddly-dum, because they gerrymandered the district, so you only get twiddly-dum. And they go, how does being involved in this, how is participating in this in any way going to help and change my life and help my family and my community? And they correctly understand that it's a waste of their time. But, and here's a big but, the Green Party is a big difference. It's a different kind of political party. The Green Party fights for local people. The Green Party fights for our neighbors. And we will not sell you out because we will never take their money. We are something to vote for, not to vote against. And they say that the Green Party is a spoiler. They say that if you vote for the Green Party, you'll get what you don't want. I say the Green Party can't spoil what is already spoiled. Vote for clean, green candidates, honest volunteers that are in it for the right reason, like me, like all of the other Greens that are running in this state. This is the time. This is the time to make a difference. I urge you to look into it.
All right, well, we're with you. So tell us how folks that are interested in hearing more or wanting to get involved with your campaign, how can they get connected with you?
Well, I'd first send people to our website. You can just go to mogreens, M-O-Greens with an S.org. That's the state website. You can get to all the local chapters there, and you can check out all our candidates. All of our contact information's on there. A lot of information about the candidates, videos about the candidates, candidate biographies. Also on social media, we're real active on social media. On Facebook or at Greens KC, and on Twitter. So you can find us all over the place. My contact information is all over the place as well on all of those platforms. So this is a volunteer-based movement. Okay, we will win if people get involved, and we won't if people don't. Okay, because we're volunteers, we're regular people versus the big money. And this is the fight to get in, and this is the time to get in the fight. We're running out of time. So I encourage you to find us, join us, because we have found each other, and this is enlivening. This is the most fun you'll ever have in your life, and you're going to find people with the Green Party that are fighting to make our community sustainable for the future, for our children and grandchildren, and you're not going to find anything like that. So come join. We are friendly and open-minded, and we welcome you.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Nathan Kline for Missouri Senate District 7. Check him out at mogreens.org. Thank you, everyone. Go green.
Go green.